Uh, I want to basically talk about attributes in geomancy. I want to talk about attributes in geomancy. Aha. So attribute is one of the ways to quickly interpret a geomancy chart. One of the fastest way of interpreting a geomancy chart. But one thing you need to understand when it comes to attribute is this. Attribute is such a method or one of the method to, to answer some set of questions. The way we use attribute to answer questions is different from other method of answering questions. So let me give you an example in a way that you understand. Attribute attribute is using attribute to interpret a chart. You can't use attribute to interpret a chart when the question is about something that has to do with right or wrong, good or bad. Taking for instance, let's say two people want to go into a relationship, then you want to know maybe the other partner is good or bad. So that is not the function of our attribute. Or maybe you want to get involved in, want to buy something. So you want to know if that thing you want to buy or not. You want to know if that thing you want to buy is good or not. Attribute is not for such question. Attribute is usually used to answer question that needs to do with what direction, guidance, or what you need to do. Not if something is good or if something is bad or if something is something. It's telling you what it's like what a way of giving. It's closer to say it is closer to say that what it is a way of giving direction or description or guidance. That is what attribute is usually useful. So I want to discuss one of the ways to use attribute, and I will be using example. I will give an example so that by that example you can deeply understand much more better. So let me give you an example. Or let me first of all give an example what an attribute is, because you might be like, what is an attribute? So let me give an example of attribute. Look at this figure, for instance. It's called poor, that is Kausaji in Eastern Geomancy. Let me first of all emphasize this. This particular chart is not a serious chart. I just casted this chart for this discussion purpose. So I didn't check if the chart has miss or not. I just cast it for this discussion sake. Now, like I was saying, say this is Kausaji in it is called Kausaji in Eastern Geomancy, while in Western Geomancy it's called Puer, Puer, Puer. This is what Puer, this figure particularly. So, but basically the major focus here is Eastern Geomancy. Now, so name of a figure is also an attribute. The names of a figure is also its attribute. So that is what example of what we mean by attribute. Now, another attribute of Kausaji, this particular figure, is also that this figure is red. Mind you, it is red in Eastern Geomancy, even in Western Geomancy. Excuse me. So, like I was saying, this is figure is what is red. Even in Eastern geometry, is also what red. So those are the example of attribute. So and so on. I will be talking. So now there's something I want to emphasize that many people often think that the difference between Eastern geometry and Western geometry usually imply negation, or that one is this or that. No, the difference in Western geomancy in most cases or in many cases always rather implies two different world view. But if you understand geomancy very well, you realize that both of them are both of them can be understood in a way that will synthesize togetherness. You understand? But so in most cases, the difference between Eastern geomancy or the because let me give an example. There are some figure, there are some attributes in Eastern geomancy that seems to negate Western geomancy. I'll give you an example. Taking for instance, this figure called Ijitimoi, which is like a conjunction. This figure is Ijitimoi, which is like a conjunction, is a yeah, it's a Mercury figure. Likewise, a figure called German is also a what? A mercury figure. But in Western geomancy, German is not a mercury figure. German is not a what? A mercury figure. But in Eastern geomancy, German is a what? A mercury figure. So and so on and so forth. I don't want to deviate too much. Understand? So, but sometimes they have different attributes that seems to contradict each other. But this contradiction is not necessarily a negation. It's only trying to show a different world view, not a negation. Not that because this one is Mercury here, it cannot be. How do I put it? Let me give an example. Uh, like I say, German is a Mercury figure, and as such, it is regarded as what? Blue. It's associated with blue color. But in Eastern geomancy, German is not associated with blue color. Sorry, I made these videos towards the night. So it seems the power supply is fluctuating. So and I don't want to cut this video and start all over again at some other time. So let me quickly round up this and be fast about this. So like I was saying earlier that EGT is not a mercury, is not a German, is not blue in Eastern geomancy. Well, sorry, German is blue in Eastern geomancy, but it is not blue in Western geomancy. Now, you might then be thinking that well, maybe these two figures negate each other for the fact that they symbolize two different things at different time. Now, this thing doesn't actually mean a negation. It only indicated two different worldview. You understand? And that is happen in many of the things that we do as well. There are things we call a particular thing in our own culture that you call another thing in another culture. You understand? Geomancy recognizes that, understand that as well. Because geomancy has passed through a lot of cultures, passed through different eras. Let me give another example that will make you understand. Taking for instance now, let's say somebody let me just attribute an example as well here. Let's say, look at this figure now. This figure is called Kobdu sorry, Utuba daily, which is called Cauda draconis in Latin. In Western German, it's called Caput draconis in Western Geomancy. Caput draconis in Western Germany. While in Eastern Geomancy, it's called Utuba daila. Let's assume that well, this figure isn't in this house 3 because this is house 3. Let's assume that this particular figure is not in house 3, that it is in house 2. The meaning it will mean, what this figure will mean to an African person will be different from the meaning it will imply to a Western person. Let me repeat myself. Let's say this figure wasn't found here. Let's say it was found in house 2. You understand? So the meaning what it will imply will be different from what it will imply to an African person. The meaning it will bring to an African person will be different from the meaning it will different from what it will mean if this chart was casted from what an Europe or a Western person. Let me give an example. Let's say this chart was about, maybe querent comes to ask about which bank can he open, which bank can he enter, can he work with. I get it. And this figure found in house, house is house of finance and monetary related something. And this figure found there, it will mean that this person should open the bank with what? Zenith Bank. Zenith, because this figure means Zenith Bank when it's found in the house too. But now the question is that well, is there Zenith Bank in Europe? Is there Zenith Bank in China? Is there Zenith Bank in India? Can you see? Which means that what this figure will not mean Zenith Bank. Let's say this chart was casted for somebody that is not in Africa. You understand? So the point I'm trying to say is that well, the difference in Western geomancy and Eastern geomancy is not necessarily negation. It shows different worldview because the names I bear in Africa is not the same name that I would, if I was to be born in other part of in Europe. It's not the same name. You understand? That is just a by the way. So that is not the purpose of this particular video, but it's also part of it because we are talking about attribute, using attribute to interpret a what a chart. Now, like I said, using attribute like it's an example of what I just did now, but I will let me break it more. Let me break it down a bit more. Now, attribute when you are using attribute to interpret a geometry chart, you are not using it to answer something if something is bad or something is good or something is right or something is bad. No, or something. So it's just like a description, a guide. Like probably you don't know what to do or you don't know what to pick, you don't know what to choose. You want to choose from something, you want to pick from something, you want to know which one to pick. So attribute using method of attribute to interpret the chart will make you make a right choice. Look at an example of what I just did here now. I already know that the attribute. Let me go back to the first example I was using. That this one is it simplified symbolizes red. Now let's say you have options of things before you that has to do with different colors. So you're not asking that which one can you pick? Knowing that this one is red, let's say this one now fall in the house of war, a house of war cohesitate. House of the things you are asking about. You know we have different houses that symbolize that stand for different things. Let's say this particular figure that already means red stand in that house is telling you that among the various things you have, you should pick red. You understand the simple logic of how to use attribute to interpret a chart. So your vast knowledge of the figure and the attribute, your vast knowledge about figure and the attribute will give a better edge in interpreting a chart using attribute. That is your vast knowledge, your wide knowledge about figure and the attribute will give you upper hand or will give you better understanding, will give you quicker understanding on how to use attribute to interpret a chart. I hope with this little example I have given or with this sample, I hope you are able to get at least a more deeper understanding of the whole stuff. But mind you, attribute I don't want you to make mistake. That's why I want to emphasize it. Attributes are not used to answer maybe question that has to do with is this thing maybe let's say you want to go into a relationship, you want to know maybe this person is good for you or not, or something is good for you or not. It's not about something. That is not the method. That is not the what attribute is used for. Attribute is used for something that doesn't have to do with right or wrong or good or bad. It has to do with something that you want to choose for or something you want to identify, something you want to know. Doesn't have attribute doesn't have much to do with morality. I think I'm getting a better explanation now. Attribute doesn't have to do with morality. Attribute doesn't have to do with right or wrong. Attribute has something to do with choosing what you need to choose, what you want to choose. Probably you have something, 3 or 4 things that you know you have personally accepted that they are good, but you don't know which ones to pick. You already know they are good. Or let's say you want to throw something away, you don't like that thing again. Among the various options, I don't know the one you want to throw away. So attributes can be used for right or wrong as well, but I don't want you to understand it as right or wrong. Attribute is most likely is specialized. Attribute interpretation is more like something that you want to choose something from options. You understand? So all you have video, I want to believe you already understand or have an idea about what attribute is. So with this understanding, you can better understand it by the time you meditate, you take your time to meditate about it, or when you ask question. Because sometimes question will make one to say some other thing that one did not remember to say in the process of what explanation. You understand? Sorry for this night hour because everything is dark. Like I said, this chat is not a recharge. It was just casted for this primary purpose. But thank you very much. May your life never be useless as you like, comment, or share my post. May your life never be useless. And remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel because when you subscribe, whenever I make a new post, you will always be among the first person to get notification that a new post has been posted. So thank you very much. May God bless you. I'm sorry for this dark something too. I did this video at the night hour and there was power interruption while I was doing it. So sorry for that. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time.